Welcome to the Insurance Revolutionized podcast brought to you by Success Without Sacrifice. I am your host and coach, Cheree and here on the podcast, we are on a mission to revolutionize the way women in insurance do business. We will be interviewing women who are changing the face of insurance, as well as giving you tips and inspiration to grow your agency to new heights without sacrificing what is most important to you. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Insurance Revolutionized podcast. I'm so excited to have my friend and former client, Lisa LeBlanc here. If you have been listening to this podcast for long, you have heard me mention Lisa's name several times. And the reason is because Lisa is the reason that this podcast exists. Lisa is the reason that we have really niched down to insurance, which we're going to talk a little bit about. But Lisa owns Northtown Insurance here in Spokane, Washington, which is my hometown, along with her husband. They have a team of 6 total, including the 2 of them. And Lisa, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you on. I've been dying to have you on and do this interview. So today's going to be a little bit different than our normal format, only because I've worked with Lisa as a client. So we're going to talk about kind of how we met and how that all came together. And also, I just really want to dive into some of the ways that they run their agency that I think is really unique and is one of the things that attracted me to insurance. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here. For those of you who don't, for those people who don't know you, just tell them a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, 1. And 2, I didn't know that our work together is what brought about the podcast, but I love it. And just from what I've been listening to other guests that you've had, like Kelly last week, how she leads with her values and boundaries are important. I am just hearing so much like-heartedness in this. And so just, yeah, I'm loving it, but thank you. So Lisa LeBlanc, my husband Aaron and I do own Northtown Insurance. We bought it about 3 years ago, and I had worked here previously. And so seeing kind of 2 sides of the business has been being in it and then more on it has been exciting. So much growth has happened over just even the last year or 2, like personal growth, team growth. It's been powerful, and I attribute a lot of that, Cheree, to working with you and just eye-opening conversations. So good.
Thank you. Oh, you're going to make me cry a little bit. Lisa, I do want to ask, before we talk about kind of how we met, what made you, because you had worked as an insurance agent for how long?
About 10 years.
Okay. And then what made you and Aaron decide, like, we want to take this over, we want to buy this?
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's big. Okay, that's big. I'm going to try to make it small. When I was working I had been an agent, I had been customer service. I eventually moved into more of management and operations. And when I was digging into the deeper parts of the business, I was realizing that a lot of the way things were run were just not in accordance with my values. And at the time, my voice was very small. At the time, I acted like a victim to my circumstance, and I just would not honor my convictions, or I just wasn't showing up for myself very well, and I was just riding the wave of, I guess this is how it's going to be. And finally, some things happened in life that pushed me, that essentially required me to lean into things that just weren't right and find new life rhythms, define my values. And so in doing that, it just came about that I couldn't be in the business the way that it was anymore. And I let the owner know that, and he was gracious enough to sell it to us, and we took it from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it. So, anybody that's listening to this, I'm sure, and I've heard this through a lot of the podcast interviews we do, is working for somebody else It's that like, this doesn't align with me. This doesn't align with my values. I just can't do this anymore. And so I feel like a lot of the stories I've heard, that's how people end up owning their own agencies.
Wow.
And Lisa, when you and I had met, so we're just going to kind of take it back here a little bit. So I didn't know Lisa. We kind of ran in some of the same groups. We were in the same networking groups, and I would see anytime anybody asked about insurance, anything insurance related, it would always come up, Northtown Insurance, Lisa LeBlanc, like 10 times in every comment. Every once in a while, there would be other people that, got tagged in there, but always Lisa. And so I was like, who is this Lisa person? We didn't know each other. And at the time, I was specifically coaching mompreneurs. But I was really, at that time, I was really feeling like I needed to expand and start coaching more than just mompreneurs and just female entrepreneurs in general. And I also, around that time, really felt called to put on a weekend self-care retreat. I've always loved hosting retreats, but I've never done a weekend retreat. And I just really wanted it to be a time for people to come and connect. I wasn't looking to get anything out of it. And so I had just put it out on Facebook land asking if any women would be interested. And Lisa was like, me, I'm not a mom, but I would love to come and we want to sponsor it. And I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't even looking for sponsors. And I said, yes, this is open to all women. I would love to have you come. And so that's kind of where our relationship started. And one of the things that I really, loved about you, Lisa, is when we had met to talk about like what that sponsorship would look like, you weren't looking, it wasn't to get your name out there. It was really like just came from your heart, and you just felt like you really wanted to sponsor this thing. So, and I've had other people like talk about sponsorships, but they're always looking into it as, what do I get out of it? And that's just business sometimes, right?
Sure.
But you just had such a different approach. So I want to talk about that for a second, because I think that just speaks to the heart of who you are and how you also run your agency. So, just tell me a little bit, like, what made you want to sponsor that retreat, knowing that you weren't necessarily going to get anything out of it?
Yeah. Selfishly, I wanted to go. And so, it just called to me, and it spoke to a part of me that was longing for something that I couldn't put my finger on. Just again, like knowing I was not in alignment with the way the business was going, as far as just chaos, like life felt like chaos. And so just hearing about it and it felt authentic and meaningful and deep and raw and real. And I just knew that I had to be a part of it, for one. And then secondly, for the sponsorship part of it, a lot of what Kelly had said, like leading with your values, one of our values is irrational generosity. And it just means that we're able to show up and give well for things that matter to us and are important to us, because we have the ability to, because we've been blessed to have this business and it does well. And so we want to do good things with that. And that retreat was a good thing.
Yeah. And I was going to say, you guys, sponsor a lot of different community events and nonprofits in the area, which is like one of the things that like I just love about you guys. And I remember being at the retreat, and we were at lunch, and you were talking about how you had taken this agency, because you guys, when you guys bought it, you had how many agents?
We had about 20 team members. Yeah.
And I remember you saying that you had pared down to a team of 4 besides you and Aaron, right?
Yes.
And I was like, wow, that is a bold move. Like, I was just so intrigued by that. And at the time, we didn't really have time to dig in and talk about it, but it just, again, came back to that, like, what you valued. And so for a lot of people, and I hear that, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, that's like you're cutting income in half probably, right? Like if you're cutting out these people. And so I would love for you just to talk about that a little bit, and we will go back to the retreat, but I want to just talk about what made you guys make that decision and look and say, okay, this is what we want. This is where we are. This is what we want. And so where did all that come from? How did you make the decision to cut 15 people off of your team?
Yeah, I will say it was ordained. Like, it wasn't this big hard decision that I felt like I necessarily had to make. Like, things were in play already when we were getting ready to buy the business. We were shifting into a different direction even before we bought it, and that didn't work with several team members, so they found new positions on their own. And then when we were buying the book of business, we didn't want to buy the entire thing. We were particular about the clients we wanted to serve and what their profile looked like. And so one of the other agents that was here, they purchased the other part of the business that we didn't want to. And so it kind of wonderfully, because I am a recovering people pleaser, so it would have been hard for me to make those difficult decisions. And so it worked out as it should. And then as we got our values defined and the flow of our agency and who we served and how, it kind of worked itself out. Like, clients that weren't a good fit, they were not comfortable with the way we served, and so they found a different agency. Yeah, so thankfully I didn't have to like snip, cut all by myself.
Well, and I was going to say, I just love too that you had a really specific target market of who you knew, the clients that you wanted to work with. So talk about that a little bit. Who is your ideal client? Who do you guys serve? Who are your people that you're like, yes, these are our people that we want to serve?
I think, well, one of our values is engaged connections. And to me, engaged means meaningful, intentional, present, like-hearted. And so when I run into people that want an experience and they're showing up intentionally, that is immediately like gold star. This is what I want. These are good connections, which is unique in our industry because it is viewed oftentimes as transactional or commodity. Someone coming into the agency is not always thinking, yeah, I want to sit down and have a meaningful conversation, but we want to make space for that. And so our ideal clients are households, families, someone that wants to review and have an advocate, have an insurance advocate, an advisor, someone that they want to build a relationship with. Trust is important to us, and just spending the time needed. We are not going to ask a lot, but those willing to invest.
I love that. Yeah, and what I love too about it is it's not about the numbers or quantity; it's about quality. And I think sometimes in business we get so stuck on the quantity and the leads and the and sometimes that's necessary in the beginnings of business, especially if you're not buying a book of business, until you learn who that ideal client is. But I know that you guys have a really specific process of who you work with, and we kind of worked on that together, which we'll talk about. But I just wanted to kind of give like a snapshot of who you guys are, who you are, and just kind of the heart of your agency. So at the retreat, you said that was life-changing. What was life-changing about that? What about that retreat helped you or changed you, or tell us about that?
Oh, okay. I'm going to just be raw, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
I showed up to, surprise tears. I showed up to that retreat, depleted and broken. I was able through that retreat and some meaningful individual time with people and then personal time to come to the realization that I didn't like myself in that season. And I didn't feel like I was showing up well for myself. And I was participating in old baggage and habits of just being small and not having a voice and letting others lead. And it felt so chaotic and loud and noisy in the world that I just couldn't catch a breath. And so coming face to face with that, saying it out loud to the group of wonderful women that were there to encourage and to listen and to support, felt like it immediately lost its power. And so going back home, taking some of the tools and practices that were taught there, let me know that there's a different way to live and to be. And that was just scratching the surface.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I always, we just had a retreat, just recently, a couple days ago, and the takeaways are always like my favorite thing. They're always my favorite. And it's just incredible to see women just also just let down their walls and open up. And when we can do that and really connect on that level, because I think as women, and we just we take the weight of the world on our shoulders, and we think we have to do everything and we have to do it perfect. And, and if we're not, then we're failing and we're doing something wrong. And so, I just love that you had that experience, and I knew that you had that experience, but I wanted other people to hear your experience. So we're just going to fast forward a little bit. So, and what I want to say too is, at the time, Lisa, your business was very successful. You guys were successful. Everything was looking really good on the outside, but inside there was an internal struggle. And this is what we find with a lot of the clients that we work with, is that everything can look really good on the outside, but internally there's a struggle. So the business is good. Maybe you have the house that you've always wanted, like you have the dream life on the outside, but internally there's this lack of fulfillment, freedom, whatever that looks like. So, we're going to fast forward a little bit of how Lisa and I actually started working together. So she had come to a retreat, and then you had started a co-working space, Lisa, and I was coming in and just helping a little bit with that. And then I had hosted another retreat, which was just an evening retreat, and Lisa paid to come, good money, I might add, to come. And you and one other person, actually, two of you paid and didn't show up that night. And Lisa had messaged me and she said, "I'm so sorry, I can't make it. Like, I just had so much on my calendar this week. I know this is where I need to be, but I just don't have the energy. I just can't make it." And I think you had taken a nap or something and woke up. And so, it was at that point that I had messaged her back and was like, "We need to talk about coaching. Like, what's happening here? Why, what is going on?" And I just remember you said, "My calendar is managing me." So would you just walk us through that a little bit of kind of what was going on and what was happening?
It's weird now to even talk about it, because it felt like a different person and a different life, but my life felt like I was over-promising to the world, over-committing to everything that were all good things, but over-committing, and then I was just under-delivering in every area, like my family, work, personal commitments that were important to me, good things, exercise, everything was just getting a fraction of what I had to offer. And it was starting to affect my mind, my body, my health, my soul. Was feeling just like a shell of a person, and my schedule and the world were the puppet master, and felt pretty hopeless.
Yeah. And the funny thing is even Lisa and I had talked about like getting on a discovery call, and she was like, "I would really like to do it in person." And I just couldn't get you to commit. And so finally I literally just sent her a text message and was like, "Look, this is what's going on. This is what we're going to do. And this is what it's going to look like. The ball's in your court." But it's that, and I don't know you, Lisa, you can talk about this, but it was even making the commitment to put one more thing on your calendar, or even to make the commitment of doing weekly coaching felt overwhelming?
Yeah. It felt like one more thing I'm going to drop or let down or fail at.
So what happened to help you make that decision to commit to coaching, even though it felt overwhelming, even though you were like, "I don't know how I'm going to add one more thing in"? What was the catalyst?
I wish I had the text message from you when you were letting me know there's not another option. It was so like the words you were describing was like freedom and there is another way and you don't have to, you can have all that you have and not sacrifice yourself, your soul, your spirit. Just the words were so on point, mixed with knowing your heart and the authenticity and the love you have for women and the way you serve them from the retreat. It's like, okay, all right, if I'm going to add one more thing, which I'm probably going to do anyway, let's try something new.
Yeah, so we got a commitment. We started, and then how did you feel after the first session? Because I think you messaged me, and so I just want you to kind of like explain that feeling and what happened.
Exhilarated. I felt like there is hope again, that it's like the blinders came off, the cloud of confusion came off, and there was some clarity of, okay, I can see the other side. I can see the beautiful view. I don't have to live under this almost oppression. Oppression is how I would describe it. Just this heavy, dark cloud. Yeah, I felt so hopeful.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you lead with your values, and that's kind of at the heart of your agency, but you were leading your agency with values, but not necessarily like your life, right? Mm-hmm. So your calendar was filled with things that, yes, you said were good, but weren't necessarily either right for the season, or you were saying yes out of guilt and not people pleasing. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing that we worked through a lot. And this is a lot of women, and sometimes we don't even recognize that why we're saying yes to things. Mm-hmm. But that was like one of the first things that we had worked through of, okay, like what do you actually value and what are your priorities and what's draining your energy? Mm-hmm. And let's get your calendar in alignment with all of that. And so I find it really interesting that, yes, you were like leading with values, but you were still saying yes to these things that were not within your values. So I don't know if you have anything that you want to touch specifically on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all good things, like leading with values and committing to all these wonderful opportunities and events, but not, again, like this goes back to just baggage throughout my life and lessons I've had to learn, but not showing up for myself or advocating for myself, not listening to my spirit and my body when it says, you only have this much energy to give in a day, in a week, in an hour. How are you going to choose to give it? Because not everything, you don't have the time to give it all and do it all. So how do you want to show up? Like at the end of the day, will you feel good that you committed to 17 different things, but you weren't present for any of them, and by the end you needed a nap and probably some wine and were really foggy? Or do you want to say yes intentionally and be able to show up in those values and be present? So that was good.
And I remember one of the things when you finally had committed to coaching, you were like, I have a business coach and I have a therapist. I need somebody who can help me merge the two together. Yeah. And I was like, yes, I loved that, because I'm like, that is I feel like a picture of what I specifically do in coaching. And this is the gap that I saw for female entrepreneurs is we try to keep business and our life separate, and they are not separate. They have to coexist together, and we have to learn how to make them work together, instead of trying to keep them as these separate entities. Mm-hmm. So that little quote just sticks in my mind. And it's interesting because we really started from a place of, okay, let's get your energy and your time back and your freedom back. But as it kind of evolved, what I had realized is that there was a lot of stress coming from team members, and then also just you and your team were feeling burnt out. Mm-hmm. And so I had mentioned the RAMP method to you. And and kind of explained what that was and what that looked like. And you were like, yes. And I remember doing like we had come together and we were going to kind of work through this, and you already had a good idea of like, yes, we're going to do this in the rest season. We're going to do this in the align season. And like, you had already had like a really good idea of what that looked like. So I'd love for you to talk about kind of when you first heard about the ramp method, what kind of shifted in your mind? How did that help you, kind of just see how things could work a little bit differently?
I have a hard time with the concept of work-life balance. It's just a tricky phrase for me because I feel like it has so many different connotations and we carry it in different ways and it's an evolution. And so instead of the work-life balance concept, I loved RAMP because it was very intentional. And it set aside each season for meeting the needs of that time. And I love structure. And so it also spoke to that. And then it was a little big for me on how it could play out in our world, but starting to go, okay, there are natural times when business is quieter or not as much is going on. And there are times in business where something is not working and we need to be intentional about fixing it. And then there are times when it's crazy busy and we have to be prepared for that. So the RAMP framework helped us be specific about those times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know prior to us working together, you had brought in a team member in your busy season. And I was like, no, team members should not bring in the busy season. And like, that's where our logic goes, right? Because we often, we respond out of, reactivity. And so it's like, oh my gosh, we're underwater. We're struggling. We need help. And so then it's trying to hire and train somebody in the busy season, which just adds more chaos. So when you can look at the big picture, and I'm a big picture person, I like to know, I want to make things work more efficiently. That's just my background. Even in sports medicine, looking at the body, I'm like, okay, if this isn't working right, what do we need to go up the chain and fix? Like, what's happening? What's the big picture? And really that holistic approach, because I think like, yes, we can have business strategy and we can have business tactics, right? But at the end of the day, it's really the holistic approach and the big picture of both life and business and how they function and how they work together. And being able to see ahead of time and predict like, oh, this is what's most likely going to come. And so how can we create intention to get everything set up prior to that? So, Lisa, I know one of the things for you guys, and we touched on this a little bit, but they have a very specific target market and people that you want to work with. And you called it like a list, a B list, and a C list and a D list, I believe, right? And so I remember at one point before we kind of started the RAMP method, we went back to like, okay, what are your values and how are you making decisions? And so some of the decisions that you were making were fear-based decisions. And I remember one of those was we want to offload our D clients, and graduate our C clients or offload them. But there was this fear of finance, right? This fear of income and how it's going to affect us and how are we going to do this? So, would you just talk about that a little bit? Because again, like, yes, you are value focused, but that fear often comes in and our head tries to go, no, logically that doesn't make sense. I can't do that. So would you just walk us through that a little bit?
Oh my goodness. Yes. And that's what's so interesting about like leading with your values is they will rub up against your fears and realities. But what I'm finding again and again and again in lessons is that leading with your values is never the wrong answer. Like no matter what is to come on the other end, it's like good attracts good, or, like attracts like, and that's just, so yes, we were in the process of the D clients, or the clients that have been very aggressive or even abusive, and they suck our energy and we're hurting our overall morale. But then I calculated the premium of these clients and I'm like, that's not awesome. But then just working with you was helpful to just keep going back to what matters. And we had come up with this team vision of, we want more time, more energy, more money so that we can give generously to our clients, to our community, to ourselves, and to our families. And when we're focusing on that vision and coming up against, do I want more money, or do I want more energy, or do I want more time? Like, this specific decision became easier because we're saying more time, more money, more energy. And that happens when we're making hard decisions like this. So,
I love it. I love it. And one thing I wanted to say too is, and we touched on this a little bit, so you and your team were both feeling burnt out before implementing the RAMP method. Talk us through that. Why do you think the burnout was there? And what I want to point this out too. You guys do, so their agency, they're very intentional about building team culture, right? You guys do a lot of, actually, I'll let you talk on that, but, and just kind of some of the specifics of what you do with your team. But I know you provide continuing ed money for them. You bring in different speakers and different people, not just for business growth, and professional growth, but also personal growth. So let's start there for a second. What do you do within your team? So you guys do meetings monthly, you do them quarterly. Walk us kind of through that and the team culture that you want, because I know that you guys are you really want like that family feel within your agency. So talk about, how do you do that? What does that look like?
Yeah. One of our values is purposeful growth. And what that means to me is that we're intentional about growing. Like, we set a goal or a vision and we all create them individually and as a company. And then we invest in movement toward that goal or vision. And so that comes with, everyone has a annual budget that they can use toward personal development, whether it's their own coaching or courses they want to take to improve, industry related or not. And that keeps us like forward moving, like progress minded, and remembering to include ourselves in that process. Like, it's not always about the business or the workload or the money. It's, where are we going, and just always moving forward. So that is a big one for us. And then that also goes into how we manage our goals for the business. So we're doing weekly meetings now for accountability and just checking in as a team. So it's weekly and then monthly, quarterly, just staying in tune, like staying connected. And I find when we're using that kind of accountability and the RAMP method, the rhythms we're able to create as a little unit has made tremendous growth, like personally, individuals, and then as a culture.
And then you guys also do really fun stuff. So I highly recommend you guys go look at Northtown Insurance on Instagram, because your guys' Instagram is so fun. One of the things I love that you guys do too is you just do a lot of team building stuff where like I know for Halloween you guys dress up in a theme, like it was like Wizard of Oz, and you guys are so cute. I love seeing your posts and they're just so fun. And I think like just your social media is that whole like educate, entertain, and there's one more in there. But your social media is like on point. I love it so much. But coming back to that team building, you guys are really intentional about your team going out into the community and then also doing stuff to like rest as a team as well. But so I was actually surprised when we were working together that your team was feeling burnt out, and there was some conflict within the team. And at first we thought that, it was just kind of like a general burnout. And there was some sense of that. So, first, why do you feel your team was feeling burnt out? Where was everybody kind of at?
Oh, gosh, that's hard. So we were all trying to show up well and wholeheartedly for each other and serve our clients and stay in alignment with our values. But there was just a disconnect. Like I'm trying to push and lead and bring them along with me, but not all of them were able to communicate their needs or share where they were struggling, or they didn't want to be a disappointment and so they wouldn't share. So I think that was some of it, or they didn't have the answer and they were having a hard time articulating and they didn't want to be clumsy about trying to get it out and be a downer for the team. Because I do sincerely believe our whole team, like good-hearted, quality human beings that just don't always know how to show up well for ourselves. And I think a lot of that was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And so after you and I had kind of worked through the RAMP method and what that was going to look like and what each of your seasons were going to look like, you had asked me to come in and present to the team, which I was a little nervous about, honestly, because I'm used to working with women and half of your team is men. And I was like, and so a lot of what I do in coaching is, helping you to really connect with your body. And so for Lisa, it was helping her like feel her yes and feel her no and where that existed in her body. And so that's a big piece of what we do. And so I was like, I don't know how men are going to like respond to this. Are they going to think it's weird, but it was really fun coming in and just presenting and kind of talking about what the RAMP method is and helping them to understand that, but also helping them to really connect with what are their stress triggers and, different things like that. And so, so it went really well, and I thought it was really fun and I loved it. And I'm curious now with the RAMP method. I know it's a little bit different now, just with the hard market the insurance is in. You and I had talked about this, that your normal busy seasons have changed. And I should mention too, I don't think we mentioned this, but you are in property and casualty. That's what you guys do in business insurance. So your normal busy seasons were spring and summer. And now it has shifted earlier. Like you said, February was really busy just because of everything that's going on with the insurance industry. So, knowing that like, I have this structure and it's all planned out and then not getting flipped on its head. Nothing's ever going to be perfect and we can plan as much as we can, but we also have to be flexible. So I'd love to hear, how do you feel like the RAMP method has helped your team as a whole? And then what has that looked like with all the craziness that's happening right now?
We were so structured. Like we had it lined out and like from January and February, we were going to be doing, like master and like get all of our processes in place and just, however, we did a couple things that I loved. Like we did keep our rest season. So in June has notoriously been a slower month for us. Like everybody's buying toys and we're doing all that in May, and then June kind of like people are starting vacations anyway. So we kept one of our rest activities in June, which was everyone got a summer break off. So each person had a week off. That was no responsibilities, no work, don't check your email. And we kept that, and that was wonderful. It was wonderful to look forward to. And then the other thing that we've adjusted a little bit is RAMP method is awesome if you can plan the whole year and gear up and get ready for peak time, but we've made it smaller as needed. So with the market just being all over the place, we realized we don't know what to expect in 1 month, but we do know Thursdays are quiet. And so Thursdays, we just use the RAMP throughout the week. So on Mondays and Fridays, it's only the necessities day. It's don't take anything extra on your plate that you don't have to. So it's flexible is what I've enjoyed.
I love it. Yes. And that's why we say that it's really helping create a structure within your day, your week, your month, and your year, because you can literally apply it to every single one of those, even within your day, right? Like you need rest time, you need downtime. And so, Obviously it's not going to be as specific as it would be like in your year of processes and, what's getting outsourced and when and all of that stuff. But I love that you guys have taken that into your week and really learned how to apply that. And I also love that you gave each person a week off in June, because I know you and we had talked about this. So you guys do, you guys have a policy of unlimited time off, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
How has that changed a little bit within the ramp method? Have you changed the structure of that, of what that looks like? Because I know before it wasn't just a week off in June for every single person.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about that. And then I also would love to know, how have you seen that affect yourself and also the performance within your team of allowing people that full week off of just completely doing nothing work related?
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, it was so good. So with the unlimited time off, that only makes sense for us because we're a high performance team. And if we have a team member who is not on board with that, it's not as effective. So we're very lucky. So our team shows up regularly and is invested and engaged, and so they don't generally take a lot of time off. So this almost requires them to do it and plan ahead for themselves. And with the ramp method, each area is so intentional. So it's not just like at night. Night is rest time. It's dark. You go to bed. You're resting. This allows us to go, okay, planning ahead to fully enjoy the rest so that we get the refueling that we need. Was transformative. And then it was helpful too in some ways. So to have the team member gone for the week, all the rest of the team can get a feel for how is their workload or what sort of things are coming through that I didn't realize that they handled, or they don't need to be handling that anymore, or is there a better system? So that was helpful too. That was a surprise win.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a great idea of getting a sense for workload, because everybody else is taking on their workload, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order for them to have that week off. So, are you guys, because I know some agents are specifically trained in one area. So you guys are obviously cross-trained and you all know how to do each other's jobs to some extent, I would assume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say in June, it came to light that our commercial account manager is so talented and does far more than we realized. And we actually need to be more cross-trained in what their processes are and how they're doing it. So that was very helpful.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. Today's episode was part 1 of a 2-part series. Be sure to check out our next episode, episode 13, where Lisa and I continue our conversation and we dive into more topics that you are not going to want to miss. See you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Insurance Revolutionized podcast today. We know there is a lot on your plate, so it means the world to us that you stopped in to give us a listen. We hope you will join us each week as we dive into topics such as mindset, goal setting, productivity, self-care, and so much more. We want to inspire more women to have success without sacrificing what is most important to them, and we need your help. If this podcast has inspired you, would you do us a favor? Would you take a minute to leave us a rating and a review or share with your friends? Let's change the face of insurance for women. Until next time.